It's felt like this pre-season has been very much, how does the Essendon Footy Club perform? How do we do it together?
That's the decision we're training. Do you in offence or you got to support the ball? Just that reaction time anticipation.
Go well, lads. The intensity there.
Like, mistakes happen all the time. The good players, as soon as they make a mistake, they're just back into the next one. That's what we're training.
Take him out!
It's time to rethink the Bombers in 2024.
Let's celebrate every little win. Celebrate the spoils, celebrate the chases, celebrate the tackles, celebrate the half wins. Hey, let's go.
They're serious contenders. It's time to take them seriously.
And after a couple of decades of hardship for the supporters, they're just loving showtime at the moment.
The success-starved masses of Essendon fans now have something to believe in.
I think there's a fair bit of grit in our team. We like to put our head over the ball.
Whatever the Essendon edge is, it's working pretty well.
Seems like a little while ago, the Essendon edge, doesn't it? But it is working pretty well, even though Collingwood didn't really jump them. They just kicked some goals, really, that Essendon allowed them early. But the Bombers were fantastic, weren't they, for the rest of the night? And it is fascinating to know where we are, where we think they are at, and as it is with the Pies. But we heard a lot and saw a lot there from Zack Meritt. His leadership has been incredible, hasn't it?
Yeah, we've talked about him multiple times through the course of the year. I think his leadership at a club that needs to lift and change the standards and all those sorts of things, it's a difficult task. Yeah, and often you get separated from the group because you're just asking for perfection from a group that's not ready to buy in. And he's had to live that for 2 or 3 years. This year he's gone the next level. And most of it without the footy. This is terrific, all this stuff here, right? The numbers, the disposals, the ability to create scores. But this without the footy is the reason why his leadership now, in my opinion, stamps him as the All-Australian captain. Said it about round 6. We backed over again about round 10, Joey. And I just think this is going to permeate through the group, that if you do the team things, these are the rewards that we get.
Well, that's the ultimate level of leadership, isn't it, when the rest of the team jump on board.
Yeah.
And you couldn't say that about an Essendon side in previous years, and he's been doing that for a number of years, to be fair, but he's taken it to another level. But more importantly, he's got the rest of the team to jump on board. He's been brilliant.
So I'm looking at Collingwood and I'm saying, how do the coaching staff make it a Collingwood-type game? And when the game lives in pressure, that's a Collingwood-type game. Chaos, numbers arriving, and then go. They allowed Essendon to get their game going and play control, 140-odd marks, and take the game out of pressure, which is really disappointing, I think. And I think there's a real challenge for this group now, and not just the playing group, for the coaching group, to rebadge and go again and drop off with the absolute trust of the whole group at the moment, because I think there's components, and we'll get to that in a moment, of this group that need to be re-challenged again because they've got a little bit comfortable. You showed some great vision on Wednesday night about their lack of buy-in to be 100% defensive, and I agree with that, but I just think that they're being picked apart by teams taking the game out of their mode.
Yeah, and it was interesting that it was Craig McRae's choice to get Isaac Quain into a wing to play behind the ball at stoppage to support the defence. So there was a little bit of lack of trust there, but you touched on the Collingwood defence. I want to show more vision about this Collingwood side because we did show it in the Gold Coast game about how easily the teams were able to get through them and score on them. And you could find a heap of examples again, but the work rate of the Essendon midfielders compared to some of the Collingwood midfielders in this game stood out. That's exactly why, Kingy, they took 130 marks. I mean, so Jordan De Goey, I highlighted him last week as well. He stood next to Shield, the centre bounce. This was off a centre bounce. He's either not fit enough to be playing or he's not investing in defence at the moment because he's been doing this way too often. And then there's been a lot of talk about the skipper, Darcy Moore. This was right on the stroke of quarter time. So Collingwood were just hanging in. This is one of the most athletic defenders in the competition. But to give the leg rope like he's giving is allowing the luxuries of the opposition players. And this is young Nate Caddy. So everyone's talking about the confidence that Nate Caddy grew with. Look at Darcy Moore deciding to let Caddy just have a run and a bounce down the wing, but then get caught in no man's land. So Moore doesn't press and apply pressure. He doesn't get back and support the defence. He gets caught in no man's land and Essendon have another shot at goal. I could have shown a heap of these instances. So at the moment, to me, it looks like this Collingwood team, it doesn't mean as much to them as it did last year. To really want to defend and chase, to really want to support their mates, it's just slightly off. And they won't say it publicly. They probably don't believe it. Yeah. But their actions are showing that it doesn't mean as much as it did last year.
It's the lowest pressure game for the year, and that's why. For all those reasons you talked about Wednesday and again tonight, My question is, when do you start to make some change? So I'm looking at the centre bounce crew that they've just gone with, week in, week out. And Nick Dacos, I think, has wallpapered over a lot of cracks.
Yeah.
His form's been so good, and they've set up the game for him. He's been so good in last quarters. It's got them back and potentially winning most games. So the last 6 weeks, plus 2 centre bounce clearances, AFL 9th. In last quarters that everyone talks about, they've really only won one fourth quarter from centre bounce in terms of a scoring perspective. They're minus 20 points at centre bounce the last 6 weeks, which is AFL 15th. And if you go to all clearances, there's problems here. So minus 35 points, AFL 15th. So this problem you're talking about, if they're not doing the job defensively and they're not doing the job at clearance, you've got to make change. So I'd be rewarding a Bobby Hill. Hey, come and have some runs in the middle. Come and have a go in at centre bounces every now and then. Have a look at Harrison, because he's a spark player that wants to do everything that the team needs. Even give Long an opportunity. I thought it was okay when he come on the ground. But you've got to stop rewarding these guys with these marquee roles when they're not delivering. Because right now, underneath Nick Dacos, there's a bit of a gap. Are they going to correct and come, or is it just going to fritter away? Because if it does, there's no guarantees that next year they get this same opportunity. They're in a really good position now. I know that they're on the edges of the 8 to really set and go for a 2 to 3 month window and try and win this thing. It's an open year. Anything can happen. But right now, as you say, it just doesn't mean enough.
Well, we've still got the Swans in Sydney and Carlton at the G to come. It's a reasonably tough draw, so it's going to take something special. Just one last word on Essendon. Nate Caddy, you mentioned him there. A couple of things. With Kevin Sheedy's time, they always had a superstar, didn't they? Going right back to Tim Watson and Paul van der Haar and then Michael Long, James Hird and then Matthew Lloyd. They haven't had that, and obviously they haven't had the team success, but I know it's only early, but he's just so exciting. I was commentating with Matty Lloyd sitting behind me, and I heard he gave a little clap when he took the mark and went back and kicked the goal. And Brad Scott didn't even really play it down at the post-game either. He was ready to embrace the amazing things that the kid can do. So it is exciting times for Essendon if they can go through. I know it was only one win on a Friday night, but it was a pretty big one.
Collingwood went on a run. How crisp into Harrison, and by that stage...
Crispy would have thought he was going to kick 10.
Kicked 3 in 3 minutes.
As a midfielder.
23 points of margin, and they were all at sea, Essendon. All at sea. Their back line was nowhere. They couldn't stop the transition. And then this is what happened. This is the execution after quarter time, which is really impressive when you go back to work at it and go to school and be able to turn around a game that seemed and appeared to have just gotten away from them.
There's a problem for Collingwood last week as well against Gold Coast, but this was really impressive. This is what Brad Scott spoke to us, or spoke about during the week, that they don't want to lose sight of the stoppage game. That's an important part, so that's been a big reason why they've played 2 ruckmen. Tonight they went with 1, which we'll talk about, but that's a great response.
Well, that's despite, Collingwood played Isaac Quainer on the wing for the first half, and every midfield stoppage he went behind the ball. So Collingwood played with an extra +1 extra and a 5-man forward line, and Essendon was still able to work through with hands. We spoke about it in that second quarter, 200 metres by hands alone going forward, and they were able to work through Collingwood with hands in their run to score from stoppage.
Talk about Quainer. We watched him in the last quarter.
Looks sore, yeah. Geordie to go, he looked a bit tired as well, a bit
Hill,
sore.
Myercheck.
I think that's the result of the way that Essendon were able to move the ball. Switching side to side, really tough. Midfielders work hard, defenders work. Everyone works hard when they switch the ball the way that they did. That was a result of that.
So this is a zero lab. So this is what you're talking about, the ability to go from one end to the other.
Yeah. So they just really, it's a little bit structurally. I think Langford was down back at times to help them transition the ball. But once, like we saw last week, and Brownie, you touched on it, the run and carry game really troubled their defence, Collingwood's defence. They just didn't make decisions to come up really early, and even on that occasion, Durham and Meritt came from those midfield positions, but they just weren't able to go with them.
Well, Collingwood have done exactly that to opposition defences. Their deepest forwards run away from the ball. It creates so much space, and Essendon were able to do that to Collingwood on this occasion. You see they changed angle, were able to find a player over the top, and Durham had about 3 or 4 options, including having a shot at goal himself, but just lowered it to Langford.